You know what? Carl Frampton is a pimp. He's a pimp. I mean, here's a guy who comes as a challenger to the U.S., the home country of Leo Santa Cruz, and he beats him. And then in the post-fight interview, Santa Cruz says, hey, I'm not from New York. I mean, if we can rematch in California, I'll probably beat him. So, instead of going across the Atlantic, across the English Channel, and fighting again, where both guys would get paid more money, the rematch is going to be in Las Vegas. Hop, skip, and a jump from California. You know, this fight has trouble written all over it. You just get the feeling that the fix is in, and we'll see a trilogy here if the fight is remotely close. I don't like it, but you got to credit the Jackal, Carl Frampton, for not being a guy protecting his undefeated record. You know, many people thought he would lose to Scott Quigg when they fought, and he wound up breaking that cat's jaw. And most people picked Santa Cruz partly because he had a 7-inch reach advantage and just an unmatched work rate. But Frampton, in the fight, he just neutralized all of that. Hats off for the Jackal for taking this rematch on Leo Santa Cruz's terms. I'll give Santa Cruz a little bit of credit for giving it another go, but I don't like the feeling that I get. I mean, here you have a guy who was a challenger, comes to the United States, beats a guy in his home country. Now he's the champion. And how do you reward him? You give him a rematch in the United States, closer to the guy's hometown. I don't know. This is boxing. Let's move on to David Haye. David Haye is what you call a fraud. He conned his way to the heavyweight title fight some years ago versus Vladimir Klitschko by following him around and winning against one notable fighter. And then he also winning a majority decision that he probably lost against what's the guy's name? Bellew, the 7-footer. I mean, in a fight that if he would have given to the 7-footer, I don't think many people would have complained. Now this dude is fighting Tony Bellew, a guy who's isn't real. Not only isn't he a real heavyweight, but he's not even a cruiserweight. Tony Bellew is a light heavyweight. And speaking of following Klitschko, how about the con game that David Haye ran on Shannon Briggs? He promised Briggs that he'd fight him if Shannon fought on his undercard back in May. So Briggs accepted the challenge and said, okay, we both win and we'll fight later on in the year. And so what happens? Both guys won. So you figure that sets up an entertaining promotion between two of the biggest loudmouths in boxing a few months later, right? Wrong. So David Haye double-crossed Briggs, and he basically, what he did was he used Briggs' name to draw fans to his fight card. Briggs is popular in the UK, and he got played by one of boxing's biggest frauds, David Haye. David Haye has some financial issues. He's fighting. He needs as much money as he can get, and this was just a cheap way of using a guy for promotion, for promotional purposes. And of course, fans came. They thought that they would see something similar to what you had when they brought in Keith Thurman as a commentator for Danny Garcia's last fight. You figured Danny would win and they would get into the ring and both go at each other, which they did. Briggs got played, and David Haye. Briggs says Bellew's going to beat Haye, but more than likely David Haye will win that fight. So, hey, let's go, champ. What else? Oh, great news out of great news coming out of the middleweight division. The WBA has given yet another extension to Gennady Golovkin, Triple G, versus Daniel Jacobs to get the fight made. Great news. Another extension. Just joking, but it actually is good news, as the WBA set a 7-day deadline before a purse bid will take place. Stay tuned for that. Once again, I don't give Jacobs much of a chance in the fight. However, the clock is ticking. It's ticking, and Golovkin needs to do a lot over the next 3 years. He needs to accomplish a lot. He's getting up there in age. He's beyond his physical prime, but I still don't see him losing to anyone at middleweight or even 68 for that matter. However, he needs to step on the accelerator. The bad news, as far as this matchup is concerned, is HBO is claiming budget woes and that this will have to be a pay-per-view event, which I'm sure is going to upset a lot of folks. I'm going to mention a little bit. Speaking of Golovkin, as a matter of fact, I'll do it now. And pay-per-views. Now, when his pay-per-view versus David Lemieux did about 160,000 buys, I saw about 20, maybe even more YouTube videos criticizing him and saying, see, he's not the star that you thought he was. But then when Terrence Crawford and Victor Postal did 50,000 buys, I mean, I didn't see those same dudes doing videos criticizing that. So now that we hear that Kovalev versus Ward did about 160,000 buys, how come I'm not seeing those same video guys criticizing like they criticize Golovkin? I mean, does it have something to do with the fact that those guys are big Terrence Crawford fans or big Andre Ward fans? I mean, come on. Look, what's going on? Where are the YouTube videos? There's a lot of talk about Floyd Mayweather and the MMA guy fighting, and I just don't see that happening. I have a source that's actually seen Conor McGregor in the gym boxing, and tell you what, it wasn't pretty. And I got an insider, and I'll if it happens, I'll give him the points on this one, because McGregor did get a boxing license. So if Conor McGregor fights Sugar Shane Mosley, I'm gonna give my man a shout out on this one. I'm gonna give him the points on that, but I won't say his name out of fear that it won't happen. But if it does, you heard it from him first. I don't care what anybody else reports, because he told me on December 2nd. So we're going to see about that. As far as Floyd, I mean, let me just speak about his situation, because I like to cover boxing in the ring and outside the ring if it's politically tied to boxing. Floyd Mayweather situation that's in the news now. Listen, when you start talking about another man's wife, and I see a lot of people making joke videos about it. It may seem funny to many people, but all I'm saying is, Floyd Mayweather needs to be careful. Now, I mean, you can't tell anybody with a whole lot of money anything, and they won't bother to listen to me anyway. But when the situation gets out of hand and then it seems like it's squashed, you need to keep it that way. But anyway, the pot is stirred. I'm sure there's a rebuttal of some sorts coming, but I just be careful, my friend. Be careful. Bernard Hopkins got a fight coming up in a couple weeks. You heard it here first. If Bernard Hopkins wins his fight, he'll fight again. You can take that to the bank. Won't be his last. I like to see him. If you want to just to fight, fine. But if you want to fight to achieve something, there's another title holder out there who's ducking. He's a duck, let's just put it that way. And I think it's a winnable fight in Canada. If Bernard Hopkins wins, go after Adonis Stevenson. Bernard simply would have to neutralize Adonis's left hand, which Bernard Hopkins can do, and win himself a title. I mean, that's something that's very doable, something very feasible. Actually making the fight, who knows? So the Alexander Povetkin and Berman Stavern farce is still on, despite the drug controversy. The winner will allegedly take on Deontay Wilder, who I'm sure will request a tune-up fight or so when he comes back. Stay tuned for that. We'll see how that plays out. Speaking of drug controversy, I've always been suspicious of the Washington, D.C. Boxing Commission. And now I'm more suspicious than ever. They've reached a, quote, settlement with Lucian Bute regarding his positive drug test after his fight with Badou Jack earlier this year. Now, check this out. They announced that after some in-depth analysis, beyond all doubt, there was contamination of nutritional supplements prescribed by his conditioning trainer and some lab in California somewhere. So the Bute bribes, excuse me, that's incorrect. Bute, pays $50,000 to the WBC Clean Boxing Program. Now, his license is suspended only in Washington, D.C. for a period of 6 months. But that 6 months was retroactive, like May 6th. So, in other words, we've exceeded the 6 months. So now he can box in D.C. or Florida or New York or anywhere. And that's that. Now, so let me give you something hypothetical. Here's how it works. So the way it works is a boxing program will take a portion of the $50,000 and then they'll pay off the commission to lift the suspension, and then the boxer's happy, the program's happy and richer, and the commission is happy and richer. Now, of course, this is hypothetically speaking. I'm not saying it happened this way, but speculation is where it is. You use your own judgment in this. So, when Fernando Vargas failed his test after the De La Hoya fight some years ago and blamed his nutritionalist, I mean, did he get a deal like Bute did? Has anybody ever received a deal like Lucian Bute? I know there was a Mike Tyson thing years ago where there's marijuana, so on and so forth, and he paid some type of fee to Michigan, and which is one of the more corrupt states for boxing. And it's like, come on, man, what is this? This drug thing is a joke. In-depth analysis months later proves contamination. Here's a question. Maybe somebody can answer it below in the comments. If it was contamination, why the 6-month suspension? And if you can answer that, if it was contamination, why the $50,000 fine? Somebody explain this to me. I don't get it. So then Lucian Bute released a bullshit statement. Apologies to Reverend Earl Thompson and Michael, J.D. Ferguson, I believe. Let's call him Michael Ferguson for now, in case I messed the initials up. Apologies for the cursing, guys, but I'll say it again. I apologize in advance. Lucian Bute released a bullshit statement thanking about 300 people for handling this matter for him. So, I don't know. I don't know. Somebody talk to me. So let's look at some upcoming notable fights. Ashley Theophane got himself a win last night in Las Vegas, so he bounced back. From the Adrian Broner loss. He was supposed to fight earlier this he was supposed to fight earlier, and the card got scrapped. No, he got dropped from the card. I can't remember. So he beat Yakubu Amidu by decision last night. That was a Mayweather Promotions card at it was somewhere where the old strip was. I can't remember exactly, but the old strip. I know they called it the Sin City Showdown, the flyer I received, and it was can't remember, somewhere on the old strip. And in Philadelphia, Tevin Farmer was victorious, and he's calling them all out. He couldn't get the fight with Gervonta Davis. They had a little Twitter war. He couldn't get a fight with somebody else he was calling out. So he said he's ready. He's ready to fight Lomachenko and all the best. And that's a guy I know who, win, lose, or draw, he's going to come. He's going to bring it. he just has that style that he kind of started out shaky in his career, and he's on a streak now. He just wants to fight the best. And it's not just a paycheck thing with him. I mean, I think no matter what you pay him, he's going to come, he's going to fight, and we'll see how it plays out, but definitely deserving of an opportunity. If not a title shot, definitely an opportunity to fight some of the better fighters out there, and I'd be interested to see how those fights play out. Murat Gassiev won a close decision against Denis Lebedev, and so he gets a piece of the IBF and WBC title. He gets a piece of that, and I believe that's the guy that I think he brought in Abel Sanchez. I believe he brought in Abel as his trainer. So congratulations to him. Joe Saunders also fought earlier in the day, and he beat Artur Akovo. And it wasn't a great performance by Billy Joke Saunders. And Saunders made a comment and said that his name shouldn't be mentioned with Golovkin and Canelo. Oh, nobody. You got that belt, and I know Golovkin wants to fight you. I think what may happen is that Saul Canelo Alvarez might beat Golovkin to the punch and actually schedule a fight with Billy Joke Saunders. It'll be big money for Saunders. He'll definitely take on Alvarez before he does Golovkin. And that'll be that. And then that'll give Alvarez some leverage when he goes to the negotiation table with Golovkin. So on December 10th, big, huge night for boxing. Huge night. You got Felix Diaz fighting in the Dominican Republic. Punta Cana, excuse me. You have Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. fighting on that date. Okay? So, those are two names, of course. And then in Manchester, England on Showtime. Okay? Anthony Joshua versus Eric Molina on Showtime. And there's a deal in place. And we've heard this before now with other fights, and we heard it with this fight also. There's a deal in place if Joshua wins, then April 29th, a showdown with Vladimir Klitschko. Now, Klitschko didn't do, and this is boxing for you, Klitschko did not do anything to deserve this title shot other than lose. However, it's a fight. This is the one time where boxing breaks its own rules, even though it doesn't have any rules. So it might be kind of like an oxymoron or what have you, or whatever. However, it's a fight that everybody wants to see. Had that fight taken place in December as originally thought, I don't think Joshua would have been ready for Vladimir Klitschko. Now, with an April 29th date looming, that's a lot of time off for Well, it was a lot of time off for Klitschko anyway. However, I'm gonna have to analyze the fight based on what Joshua does. I still want to slightly favor Vladimir. We'll get to that at a later date. We'll talk about it at a later date. So that's on Showtime now. Anthony Joshua, Eric Molina. Later on that evening on Showtime, still same date, December 10th, we got Jesus Cuellar versus Abner Mares for the WBC. For the WBA. You ready for this? Regular featherweight title. Yeah. And the co-feature, not the headliner. This could be a headliner on a smaller Showtime show. Jermall Charlo defends his IBF junior middleweight title against Julian Williams. Now, it's a toss-up. If you ask 100 people, 50 are going to tell you Charlo. Maybe 60. The other 50, or maybe 40, or maybe 45, will take Williams. So it's a fight that most people want to see. Too bad it's going to open up the show. You want to have a couple of warm-up fights and then show it. So, but I'm sure what's going to be a replay of Joshua Molina, and then 2 other fights, it'll probably just jump right to Charlo versus Williams. Erickson Lubin, an exciting young prospect. He'll be fighting on that undercard, and Mario Barrios, another young prospect that has a lot of buzz behind him, will also fight on that undercard. On the same night, HBO. You got Joseph Parker defending his title against Andy Ruiz Jr., WBO heavyweight title. Andy Ruiz has done nothing to earn this shot. However, it's a fight that hardcores want to see. Ruiz has fast hands, not one-punch knockout power. Built like Tony Tubbs, but he throws it. He throws the punches. Joseph Parker may have been exposed a little bit in prior fight, so that it's an interesting matchup. We'll leave it at that. And later that night, same date, December 10th, HBO, got Terrence Crawford and John Molina. And Crawford will be defending his WBO and WBC junior welterweight title. So, that's a big day of boxing. Chavez Jr., Cuellar, Mares, Charlo, Williams, Joshua Molina, Parker, Ruiz Jr., Crawford, Molina, Josecito Lopez, Felix Diaz. The list goes on. That next week, Friday on HBO Latino, a good fight, a fight I really want to see. You got Shabransky, Vyacheslav Shabransky versus Sullivan Barrera. Very interested in seeing that fight. I think Shabransky is a good fighter, and I think he would be very competitive, let's say, against an Andre Ward, which I think would be a toss-up fight. However, what I think and he has to acquit himself well against Barrera, and if he does, he'll be on his way. The next day, Bernard Hopkins fights hard hitter Joe Smith. in what's is supposed to be Bernard Hopkins' final fight. Now, Bernard Hopkins said that he's going to be the executioner, and this will be the executioner's last fight. Okay. So, does the alien come out for one last fight too? I'm telling you, if Hopkins wins, he fights again. That same night on that's HBO. That same night, December 17th, a week later, from the big fights that I previously mentioned, we got from Russia on CBS Sportsnet. So you're getting TV here in the U.S. Alexander Povetkin versus Berman Stavern, 12 rounds for that WBC interim heavyweight title. What you want is a Povetkin win. Wilder's beaten Stavern. I understand there may whatever the complications were. You want to see that Povetkin-Wilder matchup. That same night in France, you got Yuriorkis Gamboa versus Frank D'Alba. Now, D'Alba could fight a little bit, so that'll be interesting. That'll be interesting to see how that plays out, see what Gamboa has left. And 6 days later in Quebec, you got Artur Beterbiev. And he'll fight in 12 rounds. I don't see any TV on that. December 30th. And Inoue, the guy that everybody wants to see fight Chocolatito. Inoue. So we're going to see. He'll defend his WBA junior bantamweight title. January 13th, we got a PBC show on Spike. No names yet. January 14th, New York, Showtime. Badu Jack, the Ripper, versus James Chunky DeGale. That's 12 rounds for the WBC and IBF Super Middleweight Unification. I'm a slightly favor James DeGale on that one. He needs to step it up, however. And Badu Jack is a guy that just seems to get better with every fight. Can't put my finger on it, but hopefully he sticks with his game plan and we have a good fight. On that undercard for the IBF Junior Lightweight title, we got Jose Pedraza versus Gervonta Tank Davis, DMV fighter out of Baltimore. Interesting matchup. Has Davis been rushed? Is he ready for this? He's going to have a lot of fan support there, and it's going to be interesting to see how he acquits himself. January 28th in Las Vegas, Carl the Jackal Frampton versus Leo Santa Cruz. It's the rematch for Frampton's WBA featherweight title. I just don't know about this one. I'm going to hold my comments until after the fight. Mikey Garcia also will fight for the WBC lightweight title. Dewan Zlatikainen. And as for Zlatikainen's belt. WBC lightweight title. Also, those two fights are on Showtime. Also that night in Indio, California on HBO, Francisco Vargas comes back from that brutal fight with Orlando Salido. I guess he's had enough time off. I don't know. My career would have been over after that fight. Win, lose, or draw. Definitely the fight of the year for 2016. You had some good fights, but the fight of the year, unless something incredible happens, was Francisco Vargas versus Orlando Salido. When you get a chance, watch it. February 3rd, Anthony Mundane, Danny Green rematch. 10 rounds. That's going to be in Australia. February 11th, Adrian Broner, Adrian Granados. That's Showtime. February 17th, for all you nostalgia, folks. Roy Jones Jr. steps in the ring once again. And he's going to fight Bobby Gunn, who his claim to fame was... Bobby Gunn's claim to fame is he's the bare knuckle boxing champion. I mean, he was something like, and I'm going to get it wrong, like 87-0 with 87 knockouts in the bare knuckle thing. So, in other words, Roy, use your speed, use your angles, because the guy got power. February 24th is a Telemundo card. Boxeo Telemundo. No names mentioned yet. February 28th, PBC on Fox. Premier Boxing Champions. February 25th, they have that date locked in. March 4th in London, Tony Bellew versus David the Fraud Haye. Also, on March 4th, Showtime, Keith One-Time Thurman, Danny Swift Garcia, the WBA and WBC World Welterweight Unification fight. And then March 31st, a PBC on Bounce TV card. No names mentioned. April 14th, PBC on ESPN. And then September 23rd, if you can believe that. And I'm scratching my head because maybe this will be a little bigger than thought, but September 23rd, PBC on NBC. For them to have September booked that far ahead makes me wonder. Anyway, so that's what we have to look forward to. Bad news out of Chicago. Promising welterweight out of Chicago, Ed Brown. Ed Brown's 26-0, 16 knockouts. He's in critical condition. He's been shot multiple times. He was sitting in a car about 1 in the morning with a woman, and drive-by shooting. So our prayers are with Ed Brown. We're not concerned about a 20-0 record with 16 knockouts and promise in the boxing ring. We're not concerned about if he ever will box again. We just want that brother to live. So please say a prayer for Ed Brown as he's fighting for his life at this moment. And on that note, I think we'll close the show here. Please follow The Fight Journal on Twitter at The Fight Journal. You definitely want to subscribe to our YouTube page, as we'll be giving away some money. In 2017, we'll be giving away some prizes. And one of the requirements is that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Shout out to Strictly Boxing News. Shout out to DPG Uncut TV. 2 pages we'd like you to follow also. And go to our website, www.thefightjournal.com. If you see a blue and white screen, like the middle part is white and the headings and things are blue, go to the bottom. That means you're in mobile phone mode. Go to the bottom and select View Full Site. And on the top, on the left side, you'll see Follow Website via email. You'll see it at the bottom. You'll see it on the side. A few places. If you enter your email address and select the Follow button, all of our videos, all of our audio, all of our interviews, all of our articles, whatever we do, will come directly to your email. You won't have to look for us. We'll find you. Catch you on the next one.